morning and welcome to our Leaders in Talent and People event. Lovely to see so many faces, and I think always lovely to see you in person. Let me introduce our panel. And I first got a special welcome to Nicky, because Nicky, who will introduce herself, has stepped in literally this week because we lost a panellist. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here in person. I'm Nicky Ivory-Chapman. I'm the head of talent at Channel 4, which means I look after recruitment, talent management, early careers and apprenticeships and onboarding. I've worked in HR for nearly 20 years. So that's
Brilliant. Thank you. Camilla.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Camilla Bruggen. I'm the Global Head of Diversity, Equity and Inclusion at Wavemaker. We're a big international media agency. And my background's actually, I've been working on the business side. I headed up the data insight group, which is kind of consumer insight and strategy so developing communication strategies for our big international clients. And I've transitioned into the DE&I space over the last few years. I set up the women's group and then have moved into the kind of bigger picture and started a full-time role in the agency this year.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Sam?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tyme. I head up the people team for Media.Monks, which is part of the S4 Capital Media Group, similar to yourself, Camilla. I've been working there for over a year, and yeah, it's been a phenomenal
And how many have
journey.
you hired in that year? What have you gone from?
So when I started last year, July, there were 147 monks. We call ourselves monks. And to date, there are 356 of us.
Wow.
So she's getting something right. Johnny?
Hi everyone, I'm Johnny, CEO at Troi, which is an embedded hiring model, so essentially plug and play talent acquisition on a monthly subscription. I've been working in recruitment and talent for a little over 15 years now. Set up Troi 5 years ago, feels like 20 years, I've aged a lot in that time. But we, I guess, have a focus on the tech sector. I think, in this day and age, that kind of bleeds into pretty much every sector at the moment. And we have a focus on, the areas that we cover are UK, Europe and North America. So I guess, my input today will be probably likely a little bit more tailored towards the tech sector.
And Johnny's interesting because a lot of the clients he works with are lots of scale-ups, relatively early stage in their kind of hiring journey. But right the way through to big corporates like divisional areas of Holland and Barrett or BT. So he's got quite an interesting perspective seeing it from both sides. Let's kick off. Nicky, what have you noticed over the last, I suppose post-COVID really, in terms of what employees are looking for? What are you having to do to attract people differently?
So the main thing is probably hybrid working, particularly now. And it's not just a generational thing that want to do hybrid working. I think people of all ages have seen the benefits of being at home and being able to manage their life maybe a little bit better.
I'd agree with Nicky though, the big differentiator there in the last couple of years coming out of COVID is that hybrid working. I think, from our perspective, with all of our clients, some of them are fully remote, most of them are hybrid, none of them are fully office-based. And I think flexibility there is probably the thing that people are looking for beyond those core things that have always been there. And
most companies are now back, aren't they, as you say? And do you find that they are saying you must be in 2 days a week or 3 days a week and it's these days, or is there flexibility? What are you seeing?
I think that's the thing, is the flexibility. So even with hybrid working, there's a rigid hybrid model and there's flexible. So, if it's hybrid, BT, for example, is 3 days together or 2 days wherever, and that is Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, you're in the office, bar none. That doesn't give the same flexibility as the hybrid model of you need to be in the office 1 day a week, we'd like you in 2 days a week, or 2 days, we'd like you in 3 days. You can kind of pick and choose them. I think the problem with that, and the employee doesn't care so much about this, the employer more so, is if it is that flexible, depends on the size of the business, are you getting the most benefit of people being in the office if they're picking and choosing what days they're in? If it's a smaller business, you're maybe not getting to spend the time with the right people that you should be. If it's a rigid model, then obviously you will be. I don't know how much employees going into a role necessarily care about that, but employers obviously do.
They definitely care about the hybrid bit, though. They don't want to be working in an office 5 days a week, for sure, because we've got some clients that are hoping to go back to that, and it's a big no.
Yeah, and I think that, the fully remote, people are moving away from that as well. 12 months ago, lots of our clients were fully remote. Very few of them are now. They're moving to that hybrid model. But even those that have a hybrid model have some employees that are fully remote, and how do you
Wait
integrate
till the cost of living kicks in with our heating bills. We'll all be in the office.
Yeah,
But I think this is the thing now. People are seeing going into work as a cost that they didn't have.
Yeah.
For
But they didn't get. They weren't.
2
Their salary
years.
wasn't reduced during the times they weren't coming to the office.
It wasn't, but you know what it's like. You get used to the extra money in your pocket,
Yeah.
and now people are going. Oh, if I have to go into work 2 days a week, that could be anything from a tenner to, well, God knows where, wherever you're travelling into. So it's a big thing, particularly as the cost of living is continuing to increase.
It's more than that, though. Can I just go through the panel very quickly? Are you, in your companies, is it mandated? How many days, and are they set days?
So we've been trialling for probably about a year now, 50-50. So we're saying, we would like people to come in 2 days 1 week, 3 days the other, and it's up to you and your teams when you do that. The reality is most people are really just coming in 2 days a week, and some are even less, and some are more. We will be concluding this trial this month.
And what do you think?
I think we'll land on 2 days.
And set days or
no, not
flexi?
set days, flex days. But reality is everyone's coming in Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
Or, this acronym that was created,
Yes.
people that are working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I can probably say that because I work for Channel 4, but I won't. I'll be polite and not use that word.
What about you? What are
So
they?
at Wavemaker, nothing has been mandated. There has been a lot of discussion about whether it should be or shouldn't be. So, but it's been up to teams more than the kind of across the whole agency. And a lot of teams have said, right, everyone needs to be in Tuesday, Wednesday and things. And some teams have been totally flexible.
Sam, what are you doing in Media.Monks?
So we're still fully hybrid technically, but we have strongly encouraged everybody to come back 3 days with the view that it will probably average out to about 2 days, which is what it looks like at the moment. We noticed that Monday and Fridays, it's a ghost town, nobody's coming in. So we're thinking, what can we do for these days? So we're trying to host like social events on these days to get people in. We also have an in-house barista and we have an in-house catering company. So you get free lunch and free coffee. That was launched this month.
Do you make really good lunches on Mondays and Fridays?
Yeah, so that's obviously helped, and I've noticed a bit of a change in regards to the coffee. Obviously, the in-house catering company is only a week in, so we'll keep an eye on that as well.
And do you think we'll creep up? Do you, it's gone from 2 days to 3 days to 4 days, and we'll be back into the old world one? Never.
No.
Just because
I
workers
can't
won't stand for it.
imagine. Yeah, I can't. I don't think people coming into the business now will adopt that. Who knows? But I think it's unlikely.
I also think employers also see the benefit of it not being 5 days a week in the office. It's not just the cost aspect of it, but for some reason, I guess 3-4 years ago, we probably didn't trust employees the same that we do now.
We didn't have the same tools, to be fair, did we? The Zooms.
Yeah. Or maybe we did, but we just didn't take that step. And obviously, COVID made us take that step. But I think that flexibility where people just get their work done, and I think there was maybe a misconception that might not happen before COVID, but it does. So I don't see employers necessarily wanting to go.
But one thing we know for sure is that there has been lots of resignations, there's been lots of movement. And if you're sitting at home all day, you do lose that sense of community, that sense of loyalty. And even if you're going to the office and there's a few people sitting around, so maybe that's contributing to it. Maybe, if I get £10,000 extra by that office still sitting in my same desk at home, why wouldn't I? So how do you balance that? Certainly for your HR people, how do you balance that need to, want to give them flexibility and want to have that, but still create a community and a sense of loyalty and all the collaboration and the kind, the good bits about being an office and a company? There's the conundrum. Who's going to take that one?
I think, I don't know if this is directly answering, but I think it really depends on the nature of the work as well that you're doing. So a lot of roles we have are kind of a data or an analytics role. So And what people say is, what is the point of spending £30 to come into the office to sit in front of a spreadsheet, and to do my analysis and then leave? And also,
I get that, but what's the point of doing that for you, sitting at home, versus someone who's going to pay them more money down the road?
Yeah.
As an employer, that's tough, isn't it?
It can be tough, but I think there's still an element that we've all learned to kind of create culture online and get to know people, and especially if you're working internationally, I was asked recently to come up with some reasons of why people had to come into work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Well, I kind of did ask around and talk to people, and it was quite hard. And I think it is the social aspect, the kind of a lot of the mental health elements as well, of actually getting out of your house and getting into the office and learning from other people to some extent, but that can still happen online. It was quite challenging to come up with concrete ideas, and this is actually more for the US, where people don't want to. That's of all our different markets, that's the country where people won't come into the office.
Wow, interesting. Okay, Johnny, you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I just think there's a I guess a few factors at play there. I don't think sort of the mass movement of people and resigning and so on. I don't think it was about getting £10,000 more elsewhere. I mean, part of it is the fact that it was a hugely buoyant market. 6 months ago, 12 months ago, there was lots of opportunities to go there, but it was more about people had made life decisions during COVID, and let's say they were living in London and they decided to move elsewhere. If they were then being asked to come back into the office, they could get it elsewhere, or they could get it locally to where they'd moved to, and that was the driver for a lot of them to go. It was their working setup in terms of physically getting to the office or not, as opposed to more money, I think. But some of those other businesses were offering them that flexibility. Is whether those businesses then ultimately start to change and they're in the same position or not.
As the market swings from being a candidate-led market to a more job-led again.
Yeah, which it definitely is.
You're seeing that certainly on the tech side, aren't you? Yeah. Just want to touch on employer branding for you then, because you obviously do a lot around that space and how you integrate all these things into that and what employer branding means.
Yeah. I mean, employer branding has been, again, a massive focus in the last 12 months. If you weren't doing it right, you were losing out, just because of such a boom in the candidate market, I guess. I think, if you're asking the question what employer branding is, I think sometimes there's a misconception. It's about, your careers page, it's about your marketing collateral that's that's going out, but really it's about, the perception of your business in the market, and that it links through to your hiring process, how well that is run, how that impacts your candidate experience, and equally how that's going to impact your employer branding as well. So those are the areas I think people should be focusing on in terms of, you want to get the best talent, whether it's a candidate short market or moving into probably what's going to be a slightly more candidate rich market. You still want to get the very best talent there. And just thinking about how that process impacts candidate experience, because that's what the perception of your business is going to be in the market.
What have you done practically to when the companies you're working with improve their employee experience?
Well, I think the big thing is from my perspective anyway, is the hiring process and that impact. So, I think in some ways you're going out to market to buy a skill set. On the other hand, you're dealing with human beings, and it's really important that you're not treating them as a commodity in a way, and sort of thinking that back to your process. Little things like, rejection. Candidates in a way don't mind getting rejected, but they want to know why, and they want to be informed, and they want to be told on time. They've given their time to the process. You've got to respect that and understand that. Little things like hiring managers in interviews, 20 minutes into the interview, they feel that candidate's not right. Give them the full experience, the full process, and not cut the interview short, and having some consistency across that, but sensible timelines and communication across that is what's then ultimately going to impact that candidate experience, which is huge on your employer branding.
Yeah.
The good thing is there is a lot of talent out there, It's about how you capture it. And I think, one is trying to be in the places where they are. And actually for us, because a key thing that we need to do is diversify the TV industry, because of real systemic historical issues. It's a really hard industry to get into unless you knew the right people and unless you could afford to do loads of unpaid internships. So a lot of the work that we do now is with schools, actually starting at age 11, going into schools and really trying to get people to think about careers in media before they get to sort of 16, 18, when you're marketing a job to them. Sometimes they've often already discounted that as an option, or their parents have helped them discount that as an option. So
have you been proactive about going to the schools? Because I think that stands for lots of people. You're looking at interesting people in your sector earlier on. How do you, and also getting diversity in lots of different ways, which I think we'll come on to, but you can't just launch yourself into schools, or do you?
No,
I don't know.
And we worked with the park because that was new territory for us. We'd done lots of stuff at sort of at the 18 plus and lots of events marketed at sort of young adults, but we'd never set our foot in the sort of schools area, and I think I was quite nervous about it. So we did actually work with a partner who, this is what they do. They're specialists.
What are they called?
in. They are called the talent people.
The talent.
So it's those types of organisations that can help, and we're doing events in 200 schools that we've started since the lockdown in towns and cities across the UK. Getting on curriculums, doing assemblies, and we have people from the channel who are from that area, who go and get involved in those schools as well.
Camilla, is there anything you guys are doing in terms of how this goes out to the wider world and what you want to be seen as and the sort of people you want to attract?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a communications agency,
you should be getting it right.
We're pretty good at that, actually. And I think we're pretty good on the kind of content we create on LinkedIn and across other social channels to get our brand out there. So we have a positioning of positive provocation, and all of our kind of content comes around that. We make sure that we show kind of diverse and representative employees, and we show the work that we do, and we have lots and lots of interesting work and case studies to kind of, I guess, entice people into what they would be doing. But also we do have a lot of fun social events and ERG events, and I think that has been really successful at attracting people into the business who want to have some purpose.
But how do they know about those? If you're external, or is it just people talking to their friends and word of mouth? Because there's so much great stuff that goes on in internally in terms of groups and subsets and making inclusive environments. But externally, people don't know that, do they?
Externally, I think it can be challenging because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even know half as maybe a young person or a graduate. You don't know half of these industries even exist. So, I mean, I think it's about being in the right places in terms of job boards, etc. We do work outreach programs with partners as well. Like we do a lot of work with people at Brixton finishing school. So there's a lot of different ways about getting out there. But then I think people are savvy at doing their own research and investigation. And then I think we need to be have a great showcase of what kind of employer we are.
So it's walking the walk rather than talking the talk almost.
Yeah, and shouting it out as well, making sure that we're kind of reflecting our values in the content that we create.
Sure, okay. Biggest barriers to talent attraction. Again, I want to cover the next point we're going to talk a lot around is widening that talent pool. So this point really was for me thinking, when I was talking to a lot of talent people, they were kind of saying to me, finding it really tough at the moment because we're getting to offer stage, offers are getting turned down, they're getting counter offered, you're having to do a lot more work to secure people into the organisation. So I just wondered if you guys had any tips for the audience in terms of that kind of, not the barrier in terms of attracting people, because I think there's all sorts of things we can talk about there, but in terms of that experience or the recruitment processes. Have you got any tips here in terms of how to secure the candidates you want and to kind of reduce that churn, those numbers, and what have you done there to kind of solve that problem, or is it not a problem anymore? I don't know.
Oh, it's definitely a problem still. Yeah, we get lots of candidates through to the final stage, and I think what I see more so at the sort of mid to junior levels is, salary is a determinant now because of the cost of living crisis.
Do they change that salary requirement through the process, or is it always?
Sometimes we can't because of internal.
No, but do they change their mind? Are they coming in saying, I want it whatever 30 and now I want 40, or is it?
Yes, yeah. When you get to offer stage, it's like, well, we're getting lots of counter offers from their current employers, so they'll accept. Then they'll come back and say, oh, sorry, I've had a counter offer for X. Can you go to this? So it does create a lot of problems, I think.
Have you been able to do anything to mitigate that, or to?
So sometimes, but not always. So we have lost people because we just can't. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We can't kind of keep, and we want to be really inclusive and fair.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult. What does help is talking about the purpose of your organisation, around what makes us different to other organisations. So we are fortunate in the not-for-profit model at the moment and the remit. And sometimes it's actually wheeling out, if I'm dealing with a more senior role, it's wheeling out those senior leaders to do a bit of wooing, because actually that often gets people over the line. And it's like, this is just what you've got to do, whether it's the CEO, COO, or any of that senior leadership team. It's like, okay, this might be a role that's not even your direct report, but it's a key role in your department. Don't just leave it to your department head. If you want to secure this person, you're going to have to get involved. And
they're open to that, are they? They're open to getting
involved?
And
I've had people taking people out for coffee, for dinner, and sometimes you just got to do it if it's a key hire.
Johnny, what do you think on that?
I think you need to be realistic.
All right.
Yourself as well. And sort of pick and choose those roles that you can't flex on, and those that you can as well. In a candidate-led market, you've got to accept that you're just going to have a much higher drop-off at the end of your process than you would in a softer market, and that's the reality of it. And be honest about that, and then think about where you can flex on certain things. What are the key things you must have, but don't have everything rigid that you can't, because if it comes down to money, then maybe you do need to be flexible. But that means maybe your budget gets chopped up in different ways so that you've got market rate or above market rate for those key hires, and maybe you lose a couple of those entry level roles that do it. But whatever way you look at it, you think you've got to be realistic on that. I also think you can really dissect that process through the hiring as well and see where are the drop-offs. If you're not getting the volume at the top of the funnel, then there probably is a bit of a problem with your employer branding, for example. Or are you purely reliant on inbound? Are you doing enough outbound strategy to fill that pipeline? Or is that fine, but actually you're getting your drop-off from first stage to second stage? You've got a problem with your first stage interview. You're not doing enough to sell your business at that point. That candidate is interviewing at 5 different companies, and they're progressing with them and they're not with you. So why is that? And sort of dissect it across the process. Where are the drop-off points?
I mean, I also certainly find as a recruiter, processes are still really long, and the longer you keep those processes, the more other things can come into that and other opportunities. And I find that really frustrating when it's like, this is really urgent, it's really important. And then you get an interview time for a week later. It's like, what are you doing? That in that week, they're going to get 5 other approaches. And the CEOs don't the senior leadership don't get that because their job is important, and we all know that. But equally, they still want you to deliver, and they want you to get those people on board. So one thing I find very frustrating is the length of these recruitment processes when they've found someone that they actually like and they can kind of just hone in almost.
What I find I've had to do is a lot more comms to that, the senior leaders about the challenging talent market. Because if they're not recruiting, I think sometimes they're a little bit blinkered, and then they come to recruit and they don't understand the world's changed, and they're still, taking their time. And it's like, no, guys, look, this is really important. I just see what else is
out there. There's nothing else out there.
So it's like constantly now, month by month, data, employment data, talent challenges, just to make sure that it stays top of mind, that they know, look, this isn't like you were recruiting 3 years ago. It's very, very different, and you've got to move quickly.
And also, I think for us, for internal talent, it's really helpful when, we all agree the timescales, but those times are fixed in the senior leaders' diaries. So whether it's a week or 2 weeks' time, that day is their interview day, and then it just kind of stops that. We can't do any interviews and it all kind of gets delayed. The other thing I was going to say is that I think not being face-to-face and doing a lot more Zoom interviews, people focus sometimes less on the individual and less on their motivators, and really understanding what is important to them as individuals, and then selling on the right things and promoting the right things that you're offering that matches what they're looking for there. And I think the danger with this kind of, it's quite transactional when you're in Zoom. It's you kind of miss that personal element, and it's those personal elements that are going to make the difference between you, I think, securing that. And use your recruiters there and make sure, are your recruiters telling you what do you need to do to promote your role? What are the key, what excites this individual, rather than just go in and do the same sales pitch to 10 different people.
I think Zoom's an interesting one, actually. I think with Zoom, if you're mass hiring, you tend to have more of an impulse decision. Yeah, that's fine. We'll move ahead. And if it's a really critical hire, you procrastinate more on it because you're not...
Because you haven't met them.
You haven't met them, yeah. I think it's...
Does anyone do 100% Zoom hiring, or do you all get people into your offices? Because that's a big thing.
Well, we're still doing virtual.
It's not great, is it?
Virtual interviews. It's weird how quickly people have got used to it, and actually they're happy to carry on with it.
But your offices, Channel 4 offices, are wonderful.
Well, we've got loads of building work going on at the moment, so they don't look wonderful at the moment. If you walk past, it looks like we've shut up shop and the whole facade
They were wonderful.
So they were wonderful. So, but yeah, people have got used to. It's actually more convenient for the candidate.
It's much more convenient, and that's why I think you get a lot of turndowns, because they think, well, I'm not really that interested in that job, but I'll do a Zoom. The effort of going somewhere makes a difference, doesn't it? But also the buy-in you get from someone. What's happening in your offices? Are you getting people in as part of the process?
Well, it's flexible as well, but I think people are invited in, and I think we've got really beautiful offices.
Yes.
And coming in, and it's a big sell, for people to come in and meet and meet the team. And I think, like you were saying, Nicky, it's like the woo as well. It's much more seductive if people come in and meet you and see where they could be working and imagine it, because it is transactional over Zoom, but it's convenient and easy as well, isn't it? So
that's the point. It's
I
easy,
think
but
it's
is it
a challenge.
effective?
And what we've been doing, I suppose, not so much recruitment, but quite a few kind of attraction days of actually getting people into the office for an event and then kind of reaching out to them as part of a kind of a talent pool to recruit. And I think that's been successful.
What do you mean? People that are not connected to your
Yeah, so we've done, especially with younger talent and some older talent actually as well, coming in and having an event to find out about what would it be like to work in a media agency, what would it be like to work at Group M at WPP. So having an all-day event where they kind of do some workshopping, meet some of the employees, and those people are much more likely to kind of apply for jobs in the office. Yeah.
Sam, what about you? You've got fantastic offices too. Are you using that in your interview and your attraction process properly?
Yeah, no, I believe I am. It seems to be working.
Yeah.
I offer a candidate the opportunity whether they want to have it virtually or face to face.
Do alarm bells ring if they say no?
Sometimes, yeah. I think the hate, because of the role that I'm in, I like to see a person. I like to sit with you. I like to assess your body language, eye contact. How are you? Because anybody can sit over a screen and regurgitate your CV to me, which is great. I can read your CV myself.
Yeah.
But I want to see the second side of you, the human side of you. I want to see how you interact. And the office, very similar to yourself, it's a beautiful office space, and it's fit for purpose, and it has that desired effect as soon as you come through the doors. And it's like, wow, I want to work here. Whatever's going on, I want to be a part of it, which is great. But yeah, so I do offer the opportunity. So we're still doing both. And again, yes, it's very convenient. But I do like...
As a recruiter, I would say get them in.
Definitely.
Get them in, you get the buy-in, you get the feel, and you get more over the line for sure.
I think it's a test of commitment as well, though, isn't it? If it's all on Zoom, a candidate might do 10 different companies because it doesn't take as much time.
Is it, really?
Probably why you see a bit more of a drop-off at the end of the process. Whereas if they're coming in, they're really quite interested. And
I agree.
I would just say that from a DE&I perspective, I think it's really important to give people the opportunity to do it and do it online, because there are many people. So we were talking about neurodiverse talent who may have a setup at home that's much more comfortable for them with the kind of sound and lighting, and it's less intimidating to come into the office, and actually the role that they're doing is about technical skills, not necessarily about people, and so I think it's really important to be flexible in that way. Or people have got caring commitments. It might be really hard if they live a long way away to come in. So I feel people shouldn't be judged on their ability to come into the office if that's not going to be an important part of their role.
Okay, I agree. So now we move on to widening the talent pool. This is where you come into your own, Camilla. Tell us a little bit. You're doing, in your area, you're doing a lot of quite interesting stuff around the Visible Start thing.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So Visible Start is a really exciting program that we piloted over the last 12 months, and we're just embarking on the second round of it. And Visible Start is a program aimed at women who are 45 years plus, and women who want to either get back into the industry after a career break or haven't ever been in the industry before. And it was specifically trying to fill some roles where there's a talent shortage, like programmatic, which is quite technical, but it's an entry-level role where we're kind of expecting young graduates or young people to come in and run with it. So it's not rocket science, it's something that can be learned. And the program has been really successful. So it's a training program in a partnership with Brixton Finishing School and
what is the
Visible
Brixton
Start.
Finishing School then? You've mentioned that a couple of times.
Yeah, so it's a partnership that specialises in more bringing different types of talent into the business. So more diverse talent, people who wouldn't necessarily consider media or marketing or advertising. When I first came into the industry in the 90s, it was full of a certain type of person. It was so undiverse. And now it's about getting people from lots of different backgrounds. So, and that's what they do. But Visible Start has been really successful. So we've had 19 women join the business. And what was interesting is a lot of them were actually came into more senior roles than we anticipated. So they came with really good experience, had pretty senior roles before, and were, after the assessment process, actually really good fits for client leads even, rather than the junior.
So you found gems that you weren't expecting?
Absolutely. It was really amazing, yeah.
And before you started that programme, because I think from a moral, it's a great thing to be able to do, and we all have friends, and you think you'd be amazing, but getting in there is one thing. How did you get your senior leadership on board with that? Because there is still that perception, well, they haven't worked for 50. I mean, sometimes you get a year on a CV and they go, well, they haven't worked for a year. You're talking about 15 to 20 years. How do you get people on board to actually get behind this and make it work?
Well, what is interesting is how did you get senior leadership on board? It was partly because the project was sponsored by Mark Reed, who's the global CEO of WPP.
Why did he want to do it?
I think, listening to him, I think it's partly because he could relate to or had friends, family who related to these women. I guess he'd been in the industry a long time, knew great women who had dropped out and not been able to get back in. Because what we found is the societal narrative around middle-aged women is that the roles they are offered are often in caring roles. So going to work in an old people's home or in a nursery. And it's quite ironic when the reason they've been...
That's what we want to get away from, isn't it?
They've kind of been out of the workplace is because of caring duties. And then they're seen as this is a good role. But actually, a lot of women have got, they've got amazing skills. They've had their work life, but maybe brought up a family and had to do a lot of kind of organisation or running voluntary groups or volunteering, and have a lot of relevant skills that have been applied very successfully over the last 12 months in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what else have you done in terms of widening the talent? Sam, have you done anything in your organisation, widening the talent pool and trying to think about the groups and trying to, I suppose, attract, but also keep those groups within the organisation so that they aren't leaving or dropping off at a certain point? What have you done there?
So we also work with Brixton Finishing School as well.
They're great,
so,
aren't they?
Yeah.
I hope I represented them when I talked about them then.
Definitely. I think what Media.Monks try to do is offer an element of flexibility. So I know we've already touched upon hybrid working. For us, again, in terms of caregivers and looking at lifestyle outside of work, how can we amend working hours, for example, contractually? Can we look at reducing hours or dissecting your week, etc., like that? So the element of flexibility is something that we are focusing on and offering, which a lot of people are taking up if you need to do pickups and drop-offs for school or if you're caring for someone. Because we are a global organisation as well, we do kind of offer, outside of the core hours of working, the opportunity for people to work in sync with our Australian office, for example. The opportunity to be able to know that you are okay to pick up your child and drop off your child without having any sort of telling off when you return to work or clock watching or where have you been offers an additional sense of security, and a lot of people are taking that on board and are loving the fact that they can do that at Media.Monks.
So is that officially kind of part of the contract, or is it?
Yeah, it'll be negotiated in. It will be drafted
Yeah.
into your contract. Yeah, it will be a contractual term.
That's great.
And what about, I can't remember who told me, but one of you was talking about the sponsorship programs and work experience. So the other end, looking at the pipeline coming in as opposed to getting them back in. Was it you, Nicky? That was,
So that's where a lot of my focus goes, because we need to diversify the TV industry, and it's kind of harder to do that at mid and senior levels. So it's sort of about kind of growing our own. So quite a few things that's going out to all across the country to try and engage people. Opening our Leeds office was a big moment because it meant that people didn't have to move to London to get a job in a broadcaster, which was another massive barrier. And we offer, for anybody doing an apprenticeship or a scheme who has to move to take up that scheme, whether it's Glasgow, Bristol, Manchester, Leeds, London, we give them a relocation allowance, which pays for their first month rent and their deposit. Because that's a massive barrier, and you think, particularly in the current climate, if someone's joining as an apprentice on, 20 or 22 grand, how on earth can somebody find the cost to pay for that? And oh God, I had something else.
You did some work experience stuff, didn't you? That was interesting in terms of how you've shifted from people coming into the office and doing that remotely.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we used to do work experience in Horseferry Road for a week, and we'd take sort of 60 people a year, which was great because they got a really good week spending time with the department. It's really hard having people on work experience for the departments to find things that they can do that are meaningful, get them access to tech and systems and all that kind of stuff. So we spent a lot of time thinking about, well, how do we do work experience in the new world, and how do we offer something that's valuable to a much larger group of people. So we're currently working on, and it'll launch early next year, a series of 5 modules that will all be done virtually. The people signing up will have a month to do them. They have 5 tasks that have been set by 5 different departments that make up the kind of journey of what we do. So commissioning, ad sales, consumer research and insight, and marketing for studio. And they'll do those modules, they'll then get kind of feedback. It's all set up with a video by somebody in the team, do it in their own time, and then once they've completed the 5 modules, they will get a certification to say they've completed the virtual work experience at the channel.
And then your hope is that they join you, or just that they go into the industry?
Either or, we're happy. So, because again of our not-for-profit model, and we're quite small and we don't make our own programs, so we can't create jobs for people who want to work in TV production. So we do a lot of things. We do schemes where we pay for people to go and work in an independent production company, and we've been doing that for the last 15 years. But this work experience is like, yeah, come and join us as an apprentice or in one of our junior roles. Or actually, you know what, if you go and work in an independent production company, or even if you go to the BBC, Sky or ITV, we're happy to play our part because, you know, we are committed to kind of getting people into the industry.
Okay. And just moving a little bit in terms of keeping people in the industry. So back to you, Camilla. You talk about some of your sponsorship programs that you've done. Fearless Futures, is that sponsorship programs, or am I confusing 2 points? But how do tell us a little bit about getting underrepresented groups higher up the ladder and stopping them getting stuck at one point. What have you guys done there?
Yeah, so Fearless Futures are an amazing organisation who I'm proposing that we use. This is, and if you don't know them, it's really worth looking up what they do. They are trainers and consultants in the DE&I space. And so there's been so what we want to do is some sponsorship rather than mentoring programs for underrepresented groups. So mentoring is fantastic, and I think a lot of people have great mentoring programs. So mentoring is about learning what you have done well and has worked for you, and then adopting that kind of behaviour and having it work for your mentee, which is good and well-meaning, but people's experiences in work and opportunities are very different. Sponsorship is a much more structured program, and it's about thinking about how people move through organizations, and how people move through organizations is about being given stretch projects. So like being able to work on a high-profile pitch that's going to give you visibility to senior management, or lead on an exciting new client. And these stretch projects tend to be given by people who you're informally sponsoring, and often people like you who you think they're so good because they're just like I was when I was that age. And so sponsorship programs are about getting underrepresented people to be sponsored and get onto good, interesting projects, and also about extending your network to your sponsees. So introducing them to the right people, opening doors for them. So it's much more active than just mentoring. And where Fearless Futures fits in is having sessions with the sponsors to make them more aware of the lived experiences of people who are different from them. So actually aware of some of the challenges that they're having in their career.
And have you seen, what impact has that had in terms of your diversity further up the organisation? I mean, I think most organisations now are pretty good at the getting in part, but it's where it all falls off, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. I think we've all got much better at getting underrepresented talent into the business, but not so good at progressing. And a bit like you were saying, Nicky, about getting into leadership, we need to get people in and then give them reward and recognition and opportunities to progress and do well. And it's not the silver bullet. It's not going to sort out all the problems, but it is a way of helping people get recognition and be valued within the organisation. So an opportunity to move on.
So you're a data person. Have you got numbers yet, or is it still too early?
It is based on numbers. Yeah. It's based on some research by a company called Coulter, who are a US-based agency, and they've done some really great work on different groups, but this is actually being some research around being black in corporate Britain. Mm-hmm. And they've done a lot of quantitative and qualitative research and identified sponsorship as a key intervention that actually makes a difference within organizations. Yeah, so I'm always taking my data insight and strategy approach to kind of what's the data, what's the evidence, and what programs are going to make a difference. Yeah.
Any other initiatives in terms of, I suppose it's the inclusion piece, but also it's more than inclusion because it's about getting them, not just being and staying, moving up. Have Channel 4 or Media.Monks done anything?
A key focus of, like, for me now on the talent management side is around that internal progression. I think in a challenging talent market where we were quite we would go externally if somebody internally wasn't the perfect fit. It's now getting hiring managers and leaders think a bit differently about saying, okay, this person in my team may not tick A, B, C, but they tick A and B. How can I help them get C? So I think it's more
because I think that there is a bit of an idea, isn't there, with people saying, yeah, we agree, we want to be more diverse, or we want to, certainly I recruit CFOs, so I get a lot of hirers say to me, oh, we want a woman CFO because we want to have more women on our board. The reality is the pipeline isn't there, and it's like they want some magic fix, but the pipeline has not been there because of systemic issues, about women coming up through the ranks and combining that with family and all the other bits and pieces. And I see the same thing where people want to say, yes, as an organisation we agree, we want compromise, but then it sometimes comes back to but not in my role or not in this. I still want 10 out of 10 boxes ticked, but I agree with it in principle over there. How are you? How does that work? How do you kind of get your managers to go, well, let's look at our internal or even external, but compromise?
You have to prove that it's worked. So I think once you've kind of done it once, then people can see the benefit. But until they've actually seen it work, same with people moving departments. Oh, nobody could possibly come into my team with the right skill set from over there.
Or I don't want to lose them because they're so good in my team.
Very true. So it's like you have to just push, and sometimes it has to be a kind of top-driven thing.
Right, so it's getting top-driven. Johnny, what do you see?
Well, just on that point, I think that the diversity side of it kind of comes from the top. If you're able to hire with diversity at the very top of the business, it helps to drive it through. But it kind of goes back to an earlier point I made about being realistic around that. How important is it to hire with diversity into that role, or are you just paying it lip service? If it is important, then you've got to be prepared to flex on other things, or be realistic on the time frame to get it. In some candidate short markets, if you're hiring with diversity into that, it goes from talent pool to puddle almost, and that is really hard to line that up with all the other parameters that you would ordinarily put in place to make that hire. But there's a bit of an education piece almost to the very top of the business in terms of why you're doing it, and the impact that diversity brings in diverse thinking to ultimately business objectives and output.
So it's got to be, I don't know who's doing that education piece, but it's got to come, the dissemination to the business needs to come from the top, not from HR departments potentially.
Correct.
I think without that education piece, you don't get the flex, because people don't move on other things until they really see the importance and the impacts for the whole business in sticking to that.
Yeah.
What I try to do sometimes is just dial it back, and I will speak to when somebody wants a candidate. It's like, I need this person yesterday, get me this individual.
Yes.
However, sometimes I will just say, hold on, let's pause for a minute. Let's take a step back. Let's do a skills gap analysis. Let's look at your team. Let's look at what it is you guys are doing on a whole. Is there somebody, like Nicky said, that is ready to get to the next level? Can we invest in them, whether it's training or whatever, management, sponsorship, in order to get them to the next level, as opposed to getting somebody new in, adding to headcount? Do we, just have a bit of a rethink first, and then go through all of what we've discussed in terms of diversity, in terms of using third parties, in terms of looking at different talent pools, having flexibility, transparency and stuff like that. So I sometimes just pause, push it back and say, right, let's have a rethink first, and then look at what it is you definitely need and what are we willing to have a little bit of flex on in terms of I need these 10 points.
So, but managing it's managing expectations, isn't it?
Exactly.
Which is tough, I think. Okay. Conscious that there's maybe some questions here. So I just wanted to talk about, very, very briefly, if there's any exciting new benefits or in terms of attracting people. Once upon a time, everyone wanted to work for Google because they had a slide and some bean bags. And, we even had a pool table that just ended up being a filing cabinet. I think things have changed and the world has moved on a little bit from that. But what are people, what are you giving any great benefits that you think, wow, that's a good one, that's made a difference? Or, as I see, we offer some amazing benefits now and the uptake isn't really there.
Our internship program, I was blown away when I came on board because we offer free housing to our interns for the duration of their internship. So we have
How long are the internships?
It can vary anywhere from 3 months to a year.
Wow.
And we pay for that for the duration of their internship. So for me, when I came on board, I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. And in terms of internship programs, we've got our winter cohort from the 10,000 Black internship program. And again, just in terms of word of mouth and their experience, we've already got the summer cohort filled already.
Wow. Through word of mouth, fantastic.
Through word of mouth.
So you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Any other benefits? You also did, yours is interesting because I love this. There's lots in the press, isn't there, about unlimited holidays and unlimited holidays. And half of your company is unlimited.
Yes.
Historically, half isn't.
Yes. Yes. And
how many holidays on average do your unlimited side of the business take?
So all of us that have the opportunity to take unlimited, on average, over the course of a 12-month period, take about 15 days.
Wow.
They don't use it at all.
Crazy,
there are individuals, because my team and I, we do a monthly report to check, see who's taking what and when. There are people even now that haven't had any holiday this year.
And the people that have it, are they the newest hires or?
It varies. It really varies. Right. I think once you tell somebody that they have unlimited, it's like, okay, what do I do with this? How do I navigate this?
Panic.
Oh
I don't want to.
I don't want to be seen to be taking advantage of the organisation. Let me just take like one day. So yeah.
But you have a couple though that take.
Yeah, that was my one. That was my. Do you get a few?
We do have a few where we have to be like, okay, guys, yeah, let's have a conversation. But then again, what we can then do is if they're going to a location that has another office, we can speak to our travel team, and then they can go and work from that location. So they can be on holiday for a period of time, but they can also work from LA or from somewhere else. So yeah.
I think with the unlimited holiday, I don't think people really want it necessarily.
Some
because
days you would, wouldn't you?
I think you sort of feel bad taking the holiday, and
I think that's the psychology behind it. It's like, I don't want to be seen to be taking the mick. Let me just not do anything.
Yeah, you're hearing companies roll that back. The other thing we hear a lot about is mental health. Are there any interesting initiatives you're doing around mental health that is having a positive impact on the workforce?
We have mental health allies in the business who are people who are trained and publicised who they are. And I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's a really good signal to employees that we take mental health seriously and that there are mental health allies around. But I'm not sure, like, if I was personally having a crisis, that I would want to go and talk to a mental health ally at work.
What about mental health days? You guys
we've got tomorrow off,
which I think is extraordinary. They give a day for mental health tomorrow. So that might not be my bad day, and I've also got a lot of work to do. So
we've got tomorrow off, which I'm really looking forward to.
Lovely for a day off, but is it mental health?
So it's mental health. It's International Mental Health Awareness Day. I think having a day off is a nice sign. It's a nice gift, and if you do have, you can take it off at a different time if you have if you've got client commitments or meetings or whatever there. But there is definitely, a lot of people feel overworked, and then they've got to squeeze their work into 4 days rather than 5.
That's it. No one's taking away the work, are they? So it's a bit like
people aren't taking away the work, but it does give you some flex in your time. But a lot of people do actually complain, saying, as it is, I don't have enough time, and now I'm going to have less time. But I feel that it's giving out the right signals and the right signs.
It's about saying this is important as opposed to a day per se.
And I think normalising mental health as well, rather than, just a few years ago, it was quiet, and it wasn't something people were open about or wanted to talk about. So there's much more conversation and open conversation and events where people are talking about it as well. So it's not solved, but it's positive steps.
Any other good initiatives on mental health?
What I do during my onboarding inductions is I make it very clear that when somebody is feeling or having a day whether they suffer from anxiety or depression or have any of those elements or characteristics, is if they need to book a day off sick, that also classes as a day of sick. It doesn't necessarily need to be the flu. It doesn't necessarily need to mean that you're in hospital. And that has always landed really well with all new starters. They always comment on the fact that is something they're able to do.
John, are you seeing any mental health initiatives?
Yeah, some. I think there's just a lot more awareness of it than there ever was before, which is a great thing. And not just from the employees' perspective, but I think business owners see the impact of it on business output as well, and therefore it has helped to bring it much more front of mind than before. It's what you then do to address it or to make it better, being aware that work can be the trigger to causing that is the first step, I think. But I think it's really hard to drive initiatives that alleviate it or change it, really. It's more about attitudes to that.
And that's changing.
I mean, Epic Games is probably one client that really stands out. They do every other Friday is a no meeting day, so working as normal, but not on any calls or meetings. Every other Friday in between is off, and then they do a 2-week full shutdown twice a year, which for a US business is completely unheard of. But I think their view on those shutdowns is even if you're taking holiday, other people are working.
Is that on top of your holiday?
Yeah, they get an enormous amount of holiday, especially for US business, and that's people in the US as well that get that. But I think their view is that 2-week shutdown is a chance for everyone to try and shut off from work, because even if you're off for 2 weeks and everyone else is working, you're getting dragged into things.
Your email, you're constantly on it now, aren't you?
Because Christmas Day is the day that everyone feels like, I can actually.
But interesting one. It's Wavemaker, isn't it? That has flexible public holidays.
Flexible public holidays, which is so people can choose which bank holidays they want to take off, and they can swap in and out of them as well.
So for different faiths, the idea.
Different faiths. So if you could decide to work on the Easter days off and take off Eid or take off Hanukkah, so that you could change and have it as you like, which I think is really good, really inclusive, and pretty simple.
I've not heard of that before anywhere, actually. So that's quite new. And the other thing you do, which I think was interesting in terms of benefit and maybe attracting different people, is the angel days to work on charities. I liked that as a benefit.
So everybody has got 2 angel days a year, so you can take those days to support a charity or work on a charity event, either with a group of colleagues or independently. So you do get some people taking those days to do like cycling to France or something, and then
sponsorship.
Taking it in that way. But also people who lead our ERGs are able to take one of those angel days as a personal day, as a kind of reward.
Your sponsored groups.
For being angels all year round. The idea.
Nicky, what do you do anything Channel 4?
Yeah, so we do, we've just launched, so in the pandemic actually we did some really interesting stuff. We did meeting free Friday every Friday because people were so tired of constantly being on Teams and stuff, and we did 3 wellbeing days where everybody was off to stop that email traffic coming in when you're on holiday. And we actually brought back, this is really old fashioned but it did work, a sort of lunch hour between 12 and 2 where you couldn't have meetings, and that's to encourage people to go out and have a walk or your daily outside of your home type activity. And now we've launched what we're calling 4% time, because everything has to have a 4 in it, which is 4% of your time across the year, your working time, should be spent on personal development. There's a couple of volunteering days in there, or to do stuff with ERGs. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
Brilliant. And the last question I just want to ask here, there's lots in the press again about 4-day working weeks and how this is the way forward. Anyone's agenda is that actually, or is this all a bit smoke and mirrors? Because I work 4 days a week in theory, but I don't. I do 5 days work in 4 days, and invariably work on the 5th day as well.
I've tried
is that
to
a real
encourage
thing,
it.
or is this another little bit hyped up by the media? Are we going to go for that?
I'd like to, and I'm kind of using, it's 4, surely,
that's
a nice bit, right?
That's good.
Nobody was buying it. They felt that people would just do,
it's
5
a PR
days
stunt,
working
is
4.
it? John, are you seeing any companies talking about? No, I don't
No,
think
not
so.
at all. But again, I'm not sure people necessarily want it, because you're going to end up working that 5th day anyway. And it's a bit like during the pandemic, 7 days were one. What day was it?
Yeah.
And you were always working. And I think there's definitely been a shift culturally towards that anyway. If we cut it down to 4, I can't see that.
So don't do that yet. All right, thank you panel. I'd like to just see if there's anyone in the audience that's got any specific questions for our panel, really. What lady at the back, George?
Thanks, really good insights from all of you. Just a question for Sam, because I don't know if I missed it, but you mentioned that 50% of your company are doing unlimited PTO, the other 50% have, a set number of days.
Yeah.
And on the unlimited side, people are taking 15 days on average. You didn't mention, unless I missed it, what are the people with fixed amount taking on average?
On average, so they get the 25 plus the bank holidays. They are probably taking about 22 days.
Okay, thank you.
I think some of you mentioned internal hires, and this is something that in our company we're starting now, and there is the resistance of certain departments saying, well, why will I want my people to go elsewhere? Why will I give them that? I will give them the career progression myself and the career development myself. Because realistically, we know that there's war of talent, and sometimes there's war of talent internally, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make them advocate, make them understand the internal progression, internal changes, or swap?
So a line manager giving up their good person
Yeah,
to
exactly.
see to the good of the organisation, is it?
Yeah. Like, have you had any strategy, or like, how did you sell it? Because we have policies in place, but then
Nicky's done
maybe
that,
awareness.
Yeah, I've done that quite recently. So I've been getting all the direct reports of the CEO, so the CEO committee, to agree to some talent principles. And one of those 5 principles is that talent is channel-wide, it's not owned by a division or a department. And we had a lot of debate about that, because there was this, oh, well, hold on a minute, nobody can come into commissioning, maybe somebody from Film 4, but that's about it. So, but as a principle, I think you have to kind of give that data of, would you rather keep people in the channel, or would you rather lose them outside? And I did manage to get approval on it, but it's early days, so whether it'll transpire to
It's difficult,
play
I
out
think.
in that way, it is. And I think the challenge we have is that we have 1,200 people, and we've got 850 different job titles.
Whoa.
So we don't have loads of people, there's often one person doing one job. So actually we can't, in reality, we're not going to be able to get loads of internal movement anyway, because the specialisms are so different.
But a lot of that is, if you look at core competencies underneath it all, as opposed to the actual skill set, then some of that can be definitely learned and transfer across.
You
can't
can,
it?
and I find probably at the top level, like our sales director became the COO, and at the more junior levels, I think in the mid, that's where people get a little bit stuck.
Yeah.
Could I go and work in finance? Definitely don't have the brains to
Yeah.
do that.
No,
But
that's
so
fair
I
enough,
think
yeah.
that's the challenge.
You're right, though. I think if you don't address it, then those people leave, and that hiring manager is still left to fill that spot regardless, and probably works both ways as well.
And it's great for people to look at those case studies coming into an organisation. It definitely helps with attraction, where you can say, I can look at these people and they've been their career path. To get some of those case studies in your employer bit on your website is always a good idea, I think.
Totally.
This gentleman at the back, yes?
Hi. You spoke a little bit about having sponsorship
Yes.
within the organisation. I just wondered whether anyone had thought about reverse mentorship.
I'm definitely seeing that,
It's about-
and the CEOs that I talk to that do that love it. They, and I would include myself in that, in terms of, I have a very closed mind in lots of ways. And it's like, why don't they work hard? Why do they do this? And, it's just sometimes difficult to see from somebody else's, and particularly younger people who have a very different experience of the world than I did.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a fashionable thing at the moment,
Yeah.
and I think it makes a difference.
So we have had some reverse mentoring in the past, and anecdotally it hasn't landed that well, because it's often because of the power differential in the relationship. It seems to revert back to standard mentoring. Maybe it needs more structure in the program, but what we have introduced over the last year to 18 months is a Challenger Exco. So we have our regional Excos across the 3 regions, and then we have a Challenger Exco where you get high-performing people from across the network who come together and work on a specific project to challenge the exco of what is happening and have some projects that push through. So I think that's been a successful, similar but different approach we've taken.
Thank you very much, because there was some good insight there, and
Thank
you know, your honesty is really appreciated. Thank you.
Right.
So, thank you.